The latest season of Bridgerton is out, a show that's all about high society, social standing, romance, and gossip in the Regency period of Victorian England. Now, I feel like the crossover between people who like Bridgerton and people who like board games is probably, very, very small. But every time I hear about Bridgerton, I can't help but think about the board game Obsession, where you're playing as one of those high-class families who's kind of down on their luck. And the goal of the game is to slowly build back up your reputation, increase your social circle again, court some suitors, upgrade your estate, ultimately reaching that high status once again. Now, like I said, is everybody who's a fan of board games going to appreciate the Regency, romance, Victorian theme here? No. Is everyone who likes Bridgerton going to be playing mid to mid-heavyweight Euro games? Also no. But I feel like there's a world where you can kind of meet in the middle, and this can be a great experience for both of those parties. So we're going to talk about 4 reasons, and I say 4 because 4 is a very, very nice word to say in the British accent. 4 reasons why Bridgerton fans are going to love Obsession. So I'm Jake, this is Get This Game, and this is Obsession. The first reason is simply the world that this game pulls you into. Like I said, you are playing one of these high-class families. The general flow of the game is that you're going to be buying new rooms or amenities to add to your mansion, and then inviting guests over to participate in different activities through cards, which represent the different guests you can have. So you might be inviting some people to play a game of croquet on the lawn, or you might be having tea in the high parlor or a full-on dinner party. Everything that you're doing in this game is really laddering up to the thematic integration that it brings. And it makes you really feel like you're playing out a full season of Bridgerton the whole way through, right down to all of the different servants that need to be at your every beck and call so that you can actually host these parties and make sure everyone's keeping an eye on your guests. So as you're going to see through the other components of why I enjoy this game, you're going to pick out that everything just is wrapped up into this world, and every decision that you make and every move you make really comes down to driving back to the theme that you are this high-class family who is trying to build up their reputation once again. Number 2 is going to be building up the estate itself. Like I said, you're going to have the chance to add new rooms and places and spaces in your mansion that make it more appealing and kind of more eye-catching to potential guests. Each room is going to be represented by a tile, and there is a row of tiles that you're going to be able to purchase. You're actually competing with your opponents to try and get them first. Each tile is going to be associated with a different activity you can execute. Sometimes you'll be able to earn money from those activities. Sometimes you are going to be able to get a little bit more reputation. All of it kind of ladders up to you being able to host different events that are going to drive forward more points and just get you further ahead than your opponents. It is so fun to see your estate or your mansion slowly build up over time. Not only are you going to be looking for really cool kind of thematic elements and activities that you can do, but each tile is also going to be one of, I believe, 5 different colors that you're trying to also collect different sets of, which are going to be worth even more victory points at the end of the game. So all in all, just a really cool kind of dynamic here where you are going to be purchasing those tiles, trying to get some before your opponents that really drive the rest of your actions to host parties, host events, have people over, stuff like that. Again, a lot of thematic integration here. Number 3 is going to be the story that the cards tell. Once you have added a tile to your estate, you're going to have the opportunity to again host one of those events, but you need people to come to them. That's where the different cards in the game come into play. Each card represents a different person, a character, or in game terms, a gentry that you can potentially invite to the event that you're hosting. Now, not all gentry or guests are created equal. There are going to be level 1 guests and level 2 guests. Obviously, the level 1 guests have fewer benefits than the level 2 ones, but they're still going to help drive some certain powers and actions that you can do. They might gain you reputation because maybe they are an esteemed member of the community, and when they come to a party, it means a big deal for a lot of other people to attend too. They might be really wealthy, so they could be offering you some money to kind of help you get back on your feet. Or, and this is the most hilarious part, sometimes you have a really obnoxious guest that nobody wants to see, but you're kind of stuck with having them in your hand and you have no choice but to invite them as a guest to your party. They could be worth negative points, they could be poor, so they're trying to steal your money, they might take some of your money, and they might drive down your reputation. So it's just so really interesting here that, yeah, you're trying to invite guests to host these events, but they might not always be the best move to invite them. It's really cool how each card kind of tells a different story of, why one character is granting you this power or why another character is going to be able to give you some money. It's the dynamic of how these different cards play out that just kind of add to the world building here that is so interesting to me. And of course, having the right combination of characters or gentry to invite at the right time is also crucial. You're not going to be inviting a male guest to a high tea party. Similarly, you're not going to invite a female guest to a hunting party. Not saying you can't do that now, but in those days, it was a faux pas. And reason 4 is going to be the servants that you're going to be working with. The absolute crux of how this game operates and the way that you're going to be able to drive towards victory. Now, elephant in the room, obviously, nowadays it is not okay to have servants, don't have servants. But we are transforming ourselves back to a different time with different standards, so I hope you can work with me here. Every time you host an activity and invite guests to that activity, you are going to be required to contribute a certain number of servants to kind of be at their beck and call and aid them and make sure the whole thing runs smoothly. Now, in most worker placement games, you will have the same set of workers that you are placing out into different spots to perform different actions. But in Obsession, you actually have like 4 or 5 different types of workers you need to work with. There are handmaidens, there are footmen, there are butlers. Each different type of guest and each activity is going to require a different combination of servants. Now, what is nice about here is we do give servants breaks. I don't know if that was the standard back then, but they are now. So after a servant kind of attends or participates in completing an activity for you to score those points or reputation or money, they actually need an entire turn to rest. So a big part of the puzzle of this game is actually timing out which worker and which servant you're using when, knowing that they are going to be unavailable for you for a whole next turn. You have to wait for them to come all the way back around to your available worker spaces to be able to use them again. So again, a big piece of that puzzle, one that you'll have to really figure out and you'll find really satisfying, I think, is the fact that you have to time out when you're using which servant. Of course, you can always recruit more, but the same thing goes. You have to train them up so they're not going to be available right away. It's all about creating almost this waterfall or kind of cycle when you really are able to figure it out and I'm going to use these sets of workers here and then I know I'm going to use this different set of workers next. If you can get into that cycle, then you're well on your way towards victory. So let's get into our ranking of Obsession. Starting with gameplay and design, this is going to get an 8.5 out of 10 for me. I've already talked about ad nauseum how good the theme integration is here. From every room that you're adding to every guest that you're inviting, right down to, again, those servants that you're going to be putting out to fulfill those activities, everything here just drips with theme and tells a story about how that particular turn went for your family. I absolutely love how each turn you have and each kind of combination, again, weaves that tale of that awkward guest that ended up showing up just as you were trying to coax your potential suitor in to join you. It's so cool. On top of that, this game has such a unique sort of opportunity and dynamic between creating those worker placement spaces out on your board and building those different rooms. So you're already working with your own personal kind of set of worker placement spots. But then the fact that you are contributing different types of workers to those spaces each time, it's such a cool way of completing and doing a kind of combination of, tile placement and almost tableau building along with that worker placement piece. So those two go hand in hand in a really unique, cool way for me. The rules overhead is pretty solid. I think once you get this game, you're not going to have a problem with it. I have some gripes about the rule book in that it tries to do a good job of calling out why each rule makes sense in the thematic world of the game, but it just makes it hard to read for me in terms of how the rulebook works. And if I had any other gripes, the endgame victory conditions in this game are a little tough to reach and obtain. Of course, like I said, you are trying to group together the same set of different rooms. Sometimes it will ask you specifically to have the grand ballroom in your estate as well as the croquet lawn in your estate, and you'll get, 7 victory points. The problem is you're working with this massive stack of tiles that are going to be cycling throughout of the game, sure, but it's very unlikely that you're always going to be able to land on and purchase the exact combination of tiles that you need at the exact time. Obsession kind of faces the same challenge and problem as a game like Ark Nova, where there's almost too much choice to have, and you're never going to be able to work through all of the options to really find just what you're looking for. But overall, that is a very small blip in an otherwise great experience and great design approach, so 8.5 out of 10. For presentation, this is going to get a 7 out of 10 for me. Obviously, the box art, as we saw, it's okay, and I see what they were going for with the card art. The card art is very literally pictures of old Victorian people that I think actually lived, and that is who is featured on each single card. But does that make for the most beautiful and eye-catching aesthetic? No. The board itself is a little bit cartoony. It doesn't necessarily evoke the theme for me. What does save this game for me, though, is the inserts. Each family is going to get their own personalized little box that you can keep all of your components in. All the other components also fit into these very neat compartments and boxes. So this would have been probably less than a 7 for me, but simply how the game packs up and works and kind of gets going in a really quick way because of its design, well, that makes it a 7. And for fun factor, my general experience and just how much fun I had playing the game, this just straight up gets a 9. Look, guys, I'm not a fan of Bridgerton, but I'm a really big fan of kind of seeing how well I can do in taking my family and trying to build up their social status throughout the course of this game. I just love the idea of seeing my very humble beginnings of a mansion grow into something major and fantastic. Seeing the number of servants I have at my disposal grow. Getting a really cool card of a guest that I know will send me over the top and drive my reputation even further. All of those components put together make this a really cool experience for me. And I love being able to kind of look back at the end of the game and say, oh yeah, I remember when I had that awful guest come in and then it almost blew up my whole game, but then I was still able to kind of eke out enough reputation to grab the Fairchilds, and that was super cool. On top of that, because there are so many different card combinations you're going to see, so many different room tiles that you can work with and will see play out, the replayability factor, I would say, is pretty high. Yes, you are always working through that core system. There are some asymmetric player powers between the different families, but they do not matter a ton once you get into the crux of the game. They really just set your kind of starting buff at the beginning. But regardless of that, I think this system still has a lot of replayability for me. I've played this game a ton, probably a lot more than many of the other games on my shelf that you see behind me, but I'm always coaxed and interested and willing to come back to this game to see just how well I can do based on the options and choices that are faced in front of me. So factoring in gameplay and design being weighted a little bit higher and presentation being weighted a little bit lower, Obsession is going to get a final score on the Get This Game scale of 8.5 out of 10. Now, look, if you're a gamer and maybe the theme here turned you off a little bit, I implore you to give it a shot because there is more than enough game and decision space here that you will have more than enough to work with, and it's going to satisfy that itch for you. And if you're a fan of Bridgerton and you're new to the board game scene, you stumbled across this video because you saw some like Bridgerton fan fiction video or something, I don't know, give it a shot. Try something new, because even though there are some complicated concepts here, if you're okay to kind of work through that first teach and try something new, I think what you're going to come out of it on the other side is a really cool story to be able to tell. And who knows, I think you could be coaxed into coming back and trying this game again and again. So that's going to do it for this episode of Get This Game. If you liked what I had to say about Obsession and you liked the way I said it, I'd encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like if you can, it really helps us out. And leave a comment. Are you a board game fan who wants to try Obsession? Have you tried Obsession and it's not for you? Or are you a Bridgerton fan and maybe your mind about board games has changed a bit? I would love to know. You can also follow me on TikTok at Get This Game and Instagram at Get This Board Game. And of course, we'll see you next time for more board gamey goodness.